Hello and welcome to this edition of Phillies Talk. It's Phillies Talk Podcast for May 19th. It's Thursday. The Phillies are playing the final game against the San Diego Padres this afternoon at Citizens Bank Park. 1:05 start. And the Phillies have played very good in the last 10 days or so. And by very good, I mean there's a lot of green. There's a lot of W in the last 10 days that we've seen from this team. Yeah, we did drop the sweep in LA. We couldn't complete that. I had a bad feeling going into the bottom of the ninth. I could not watch that game for some reason. I just, going for the sweep and all. And we didn't make it. For some odd reason, the baseball gods just did not want the Phillies to sweep the Dodgers, which is a hard thing to do. I mean, speaking of that, like 8 days prior to that road trip, if you said the Phillies would go into LA and take 3 out of 4, I think everybody would be ecstatic. And a lot of us was when the Phillies left out of LA with that victory. Of course, everybody would have liked to have seen the sweep, but it just wasn't to be. But all in all, that road trip that the Phillies came back from, taking 2 out of 3 of Seattle and then 3 out of 4 of the Dodgers, that's a dream road trip, gang. The Phillies are back up to almost 500 ball here. I believe they're 18-19 going into today's game against the San Diego Padres. But I think we should be happy for this. Phillies were 5-6 games under 500 when they left for the road trip. So playing tough teams too, and they're playing them pretty good. As we see, the Padres record going into the game this afternoon is 23-14. They're right staying in step with the LA Dodgers out there in the NL West. So you can't really complain when the Phillies are turning in victories one after the other like they were in the past 8 to 10 games. So looking ahead to the weekend series, of course, it's LA moving in for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And hey, we just played them out in LA, so the Phillies should be very familiar with them and vice versa. The Dodgers coming in for Friday night's game, going to face Ranger Suarez. The Dodgers are 25-12, so that's the caliber team we're facing here, the best of the NL West. And Julio Urias is going to be pitching on Friday night for the Dodgers, a new kind of phenom for them. He's 2-3 so far with a 3.0 record, 3.00 right on the button there, in 7 games started for LA. So I'm interested to see the series this weekend. May take in a couple games in person up there at Citizens Bank Park. And before I go too much further into the podcast, I just wanted to let you know this is the Phillies Talk Podcast that stretches back into 15 years ago. Just about 2006 is when it was started. So it's one of the original podcasts on the Phillies. Believe it or not, I embraced podcasting just as it was being developed. And longtime listeners will know my initial co-host and good friend on the show was James Sports Dog Mulry, who passed away a few years ago. And we had a blast doing this podcast, so it's been many years in the making here. Till a couple years ago, the NBC Sports podcast team decided to name themselves Phillies Talk Podcast, and they have every right to, but this is the original, folks. Make no mistake about it. So my current co-host is off for this show, Matt Veazey. Big Phillies fan. He's been making the rounds around a couple other podcasts, so follow him over on Twitter at Phillies Bell. It's kind of hard for us sometimes to hook up. I'm working full time, and sometimes my availability isn't the same as his, but he'll be back on the show soon. I always value Matt's great opinions and his knowledge about the Phillies. So Matt will be back soon. Maybe over the weekend I'll be able to catch up with him, talk some Phillies-Dodgers as that series starts. But like I said at the start of the show, the Phillies have one more game to play against the Padres, and it would be great for them to win this series this afternoon. They seemed to handle Blake Snell last night very good. And Snell just, I don't know, I don't think he's happy being on San Diego for some reason. The sportscasters last night were saying that he didn't look very happy on the mound. Of course, a lot of that could be to some of the calls that he was getting, but, you know, he came from a Tampa Bay Rays team that, you know, did well with not a lot of marquee names. Now he's on a big, talented team, and he's an ex-Cy Young Award winner, so he's a very talented pitcher as well. But the Phillies took care of him last night. 7.36 ERA is what Snell is sporting right now. And I think the Phillies could basically hang with any pitcher with the lineup they have. Yes, at times they fade away at the plate and the offense disappears. But there's other times where this team starts to get a spark and they just run with it. You know, they'll score runs in bunches, look phenomenal, and, you know, take care of business, so to speak. So we'll have to see if the Phillies can sweep this game and the series today, rather, against the Padres. Kyle Gibson going for the Phillies against Hugh Darvish. And Darvish hasn't even been that impressive this year, though he has a 3-1 record. He's sporting a 4.62 ERA. So that's beatable. The Phillies have to go out there with the idea that they're going to hit, and it's starting to get hitting season weather, to paraphrase Charlie Manuel. The weather's starting to warm up in the Philadelphia area, and this weekend it's supposed to be in the 80s and maybe 90s. So that ball's going to be flying out of Citizens Bank Park, and hopefully it's the Phillies sending those balls out flying. Dodgers have an awesome lineup too, so they need to keep that in check for this series. I'm looking forward to it. When they were out on the West Coast, it's difficult for some of us to watch the games. You know, they're starting at 10:10. They're not getting over till 1 in the morning. So if you have to get up for work or school or anything like that, you're at a disadvantage. So most of the time, you know, you read the results the next morning. Used to be on a newspaper, but now, of course, it's all online. So checking in with a little bit of the news on the Twitter feed for the Phillies here. Zach Wheeler, they put out a tweet last night from the Phillies. 7 innings pitched, only gave up 4 hits, no earned runs, no walks, with 9 strikeouts. So Zach Wheeler is a key to the Phillies' success here in 2022. And a programming note for you guys that listen to the games on the television. This afternoon is going to be a kind of a marquee, rare event for Phillies baseball television, and that is Scott Fransky is going to be handling the play-by-play in the afternoon in the place of Tom McCarthy, who has stepped out to attend his daughter's graduation from the College of New Jersey, and there will still be a Tom McCarthy tie-in to the broadcast, though. His son, Pat McCarthy, will take over on the radio call for this game. So the amazing thing to me is Scott Fransky has never called a Phillies regular season TV game. And that's going to be interesting for us, broadcast fans out there to tune into this game and experience a little bit of Fransky on television. Everybody loves his radio call. I suspect they may love the television call as well. So years ago, the Phillies used to swap back and forth with the television duty. Sometimes one announcer would take it for 3 or 4 or 5 innings. He'd have a couple innings off and maybe go to the radio booth, and vice versa. They would switch off and on. So interesting to see if this may happen with the Phillies possibly somewhere down the road. I think it's a nice way to mix up a game, especially for people that tune in via television. So here's an interesting Phillies note that was put out last night, and you can follow them at Phillies Notes. Since joining the Phillies prior to 2020, Zach Wheeler now has 9 starts of 7+ innings pitched and 0 earned runs allowed, which is the most in the MLB over the last 3 seasons. The next up is a guy that the Mets lost last night to injury off of the mound for at least that half of the game. Max Scherzer, he has 8 times, and Zach Wheeler takes the cake here with 9 starts of 7+ innings pitched and 0 earned runs allowed. So that's the most in the last 3 seasons. Phillies are so happy to have gotten Wheeler from the Mets. And last night as well, Rhys Hoskins featured on the Phillies feed here, doing much better here as the weather starts to turn. And in the MLB pipeline, there was a tweet last night. Phillies right-handed pitcher Andrew Painter entered the top 100 following Bobby Witt Jr.'s graduation. So the 2021 first-rounder now has a 1.14 ERA in 6 starts this season for the Phillies minors. Andrew Painter, and I think we need a little Andrew Painter on this team right now, actually. It'd be interesting to see if he'll be called up prior to September, and that would be great if he was. Once again, don't forget to follow my co-host on this show. He generally tweets from Twitter. It's at Phillies Bell. That's his handle there on Twitter, Matt Veazey. And you can go over to his website as well, and that's mattveazey.com. You can read all about his Phillies posts and other posts that he has on that wonderful website. So last night, Knebel closed the game out. For some reason, he could not close it out in L.A. the other night, and a lot of people got on him. You know, my Twitter feed, of course, on Twitter is at Fightin' Phillies. That's FIGHTIN, Phillies, all one word. And you can follow me there. I'll retweet and post some Phillies content. And, of course, you can go over to my website. That's fightinphillies.com. Find out some articles and interviews that I do there. And that's always fun to do as well. You can check out this podcast, which is the Phillies Talk Podcast, as well as a lot of other great podcasts. I have a good friend of mine, Gary Mack, does Mets Musings podcast all about the New York Mets, and he and I also do a podcast on baseball. It's called the Baseball Talk Radio Show. You go over to baseballtalkradio.com, all one word. Enter that in there, and you're going to get yourself access to probably about 45 or so of the best independent and otherwise baseball podcasts available on the internet. So check it out over there, baseballtalkradio.com. You can tune into all the great independent and semi-independent and non-independent podcasts. And by what do I mean by that? A lot of independent podcasts, including this one that you're listening to, really doesn't have advertising. It's not supported officially by any team. It's an independent show. So there's a a number of great ones out there. Baseball Talk, or a Baseball PhD, is one of my favorites. I'll always tune into that show every week, and this is the time in the season where they'll take a team every episode, break it down, interview people on it, and it's a great show. So tune in there, Baseball PhD podcast, if you get a chance. And I'll be making a special appearance on that show for the next edition, for their Phillies edition. So I look forward to talking with them all about the Philadelphia Phillies. So Baseball PhD. There's also Baseball and Barbecue podcast there on our site. Len and Jeff take us through a romp of the world of barbecue, which is, getting into season right now. You got your grill out. You want to get some tips from the pros on making your brisket or your hamburgers, the best way to prepare them, chicken on the grill, all that stuff. Tune into Baseball and Barbecue podcast. And again, you can find that right at baseballtalkradio.com. All right, one of my favorite Twitter people is named Carolyn Muse, and she tweets out some baseball news every day. You can follow her at NL Carolyn, Carolyn, Muse, Muse, and she tweeted out this morning, here on Thursday that I'm recording the podcast, May 19th, that on this date in MLB history, May 19th, 1979, at Veterans Stadium, the Phillies took the field wearing their all-burgundy uniforms. The Phillies gave up 5 home runs in the 10-5 loss to the Expos and will not wear the burgundy uniforms again until 2019. So I remember back in the day, of course I was a very young kid back then, not too young, but a kid nonetheless. And I remember they wore these uniforms. They were ugly as sin. They looked like oversized Dr. Denton's. And if you're watching the video portion of the podcast, you can see it on the YouTube portion, what they look like. Horrible burgundy, completely all burgundy uniforms with some white stripes down the side and even on the pants. But they never wore them again for years, so there's a reason for that. All right, well, I think that's going to about wrap it up for today's show. Let me just check out some other quick notes here before I close it out, though. Wanted to look at how the Phillies are doing offensively and who's doing it. Right now, as we stand today, it's Bryce Harper, who has been out of the lineup the past couple games with his attention to his elbow. They've been giving a slight tear. He had an injection, so he's missed the past couple games. Still leading the team in batting average at .305 and home runs at 9. And guess what? Even runs batted in. Bryce Harper with 27 runs batted in here. Leading the team in all those categories. For batting as a team, Phillies are 8th overall in runs at 175 right now. Batting average, they're second at .251, if you can believe that. Even with the way Schwarber's been striking out and not reaching base a lot, Phillies still in second place here. Batting average. On base percentage, they're in 12th place at .314, and then slugging percentage, third place at .421. So they do have the power, and they're bringing it to the plate recently, and that's a great sign. Phillies 18-19 going into today. And one more quick note here. There's a Twitter feed called Ump Scorecards. That's at Ump, UMP, Scorecards, all one word. And they also have a website. And what they do is every game they rate the umps on how well they've done calling balls and strikes in a game. And let's see, the last month or so, I put in an inquiry, maybe even 6 weeks. And the best umpire in the game by a very thin margin has been Adam Beck. Adam Hamari is second. Adrian Johnson is third. And accuracy, that is. Let's go back to that list. Pat Hoberg, the top at 96.6. Jeremy Rehak, second at 96.3 in his accuracy. Adam Beck, third, 95.5. Charlie Ramos, fourth at a tie with Adam Beck, 95.5. So here's a good place to go to if your team is playing and you want to look up an umpire and see how he's done in the last month, the last 6 weeks. You can check this website out. It's pretty cool. It's umpscorecards.com. All right, well, hopefully I'll be back talking with Matt Veazey this weekend. The Phillies taking on the Dodgers over the weekend. They need to keep doing well against them. They're leading the NL West by a slim margin out there. And Phillies need to take care of today's game as well with the San Diego Padres this afternoon. The next time you hear this podcast, we'll review those games. And it was very nice speaking with you. Please hit like and subscribe. If you're on the Apple podcast site, please leave a review for the show. I appreciate it. Hopefully you like it. You can leave a positive review for the show. That helps it get featured on other websites and things like that. And hey, one more note before I close it out. If you're thinking about a season ticket plan, you better call in today. I think they're about ready to wrap that up for the 22 season year. And, of course, that could get you tickets to the playoffs. The Phillies make it this year to the playoffs as well. So if you're thinking about any season ticket plan, like a Sunday plan or a partial season plan, get on that phone or on the internet today over to Phillies.com and check that out, because they're about to close that program out for this year. So you would lose the opportunity to easily pay for playoff tickets should the Phillies make it into the playoffs this year. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. Take care. I'll talk to you next time on the next edition of Phillies Talk Podcast.